She was given to the Wolf King as punishment. Then he discovered she was his mate all along. Elira stood in the cold stone hall of her family home, her hands trembling as the royal guards read out the verdict. Her father, Lord Raven, had been caught stealing from the crown's treasury for years. Now the punishment had come, and it was worse than anyone expected. The crown had decided that someone from the family must be sent away as a tribute, a payment for the crime. That someone was Elira. "You will be given to the Wolf King," the royal messenger said, his voice flat and cold. "Cailan Ashgrave rules the northern mountains. He accepts tributes from noble houses who have wronged the crown. This is your family's punishment." Elira's mother wept quietly in the corner, but no one dared argue with the king's decision. Everyone in the kingdom had heard stories about the Wolf King. He was said to be a fierce and dangerous shifter, banished to the edge of the realm after a war years ago. Some said he had killed his own brother for the throne. Others said he trapped intruders in his mountain and never let them leave. No one knew the truth, only the fear. Elira did not cry. She had spent her whole life being quiet and obedient, the youngest daughter who never caused trouble. Now she would pay for her father's greed with her own freedom. She packed a small bag, said goodbye to her mother, and stepped into the carriage that would take her north, toward a fate she could not imagine. The journey took 5 days. The roads grew narrower, and the trees grew taller as they climbed higher into the mountains. By the time the carriage stopped, snow covered the ground, and the air was sharp and cold. Before her stood a massive stone castle, its towers disappearing into grey clouds. This was the home of the Wolf King. A tall woman with silver hair met her at the gates. Her name was Sarah, and she said she served as the castle's steward. "The king is expecting you," Sarah said, though her tone gave nothing away. "Follow me." Elira walked through long stone corridors, her footsteps echoing. She expected to see soldiers, cages, maybe even chains. Instead, she saw quiet halls, tapestries of forests and mountains, and a strange kind of stillness that did not match the terrifying stories she had heard. She was led into a large room where a man sat by a fire, his back to the door. When he turned, Elira's breath caught. He was not the monster she had pictured. He was tall, with dark hair, and sharp eyes the color of amber. His face was serious, almost tired, but there was nothing cruel in it. Still, she remembered the warnings, and kept her eyes low, waiting for punishment to begin. "You are the tribute," Cailan said. His voice was low and steady. "Yes, my lord," Elira answered, her voice barely above a whisper. He studied her for a long moment. Something in his expression shifted, though she could not read what it meant. "You may stay in the West Tower," he said finally. "Sarah will show you the way. You are not to leave the castle grounds without permission." Elira nodded, relieved that he had not shouted or threatened her. She followed Sarah up a winding staircase, to a small but clean room, with a window overlooking the mountains. It was nothing like a prison cell. She sat on the bed, confused and unsure what to feel. What Elira did not know was that the moment Cailan had turned and seen her, something inside him had roared to life. His wolf, the part of him tied to instinct and nature, recognized her immediately. She was his mate. The bond hit him like a wave, and it took everything in him to keep his expression calm. Cailan had not expected this. He had assumed the crown sent her as an insult, another attempt to humiliate him by forcing him to accept scraps from a disgraced noble family. He had planned to treat her with distance, to prove to the court that he needed nothing from them, but now his own body betrayed those plans. Every instinct told him to protect her, to claim her, to never let her leave his side. He said nothing to her that first night. He needed time to understand what this meant, and whether the crown had somehow planned this on purpose. Over the following days, Elira began to notice small things. Meals were left outside her door at the right times, always warm, always more than a simple prisoner would receive. When a guard spoke to her harshly in the courtyard, Cailan appeared almost instantly, and corrected the man with a look that made him go pale. When she wandered into the training yard, curious about the swords hanging on the wall, Cailan found her there, and, instead of scolding her, offered to teach her how to hold a blade properly. "You should know how to protect yourself," he said simply, guiding her hands into the correct position. His touch was careful, almost hesitant, as if he were afraid of frightening her. Elira did not understand why the fearsome Wolf King treated her with such quiet care. She began to watch him more closely, noticing the way his shoulders relaxed slightly when she was near, the way his eyes softened when he thought she wasn't looking. She started to wonder if the stories about him had been wrong all along. One evening, as the winter wind howled outside, Elira sat by the fire in the great hall, unable to sleep. Kaelan found her there, wrapped in a blanket, staring into the flames. "You should be resting," he said, though he did not sound angry. "I keep thinking about my family," she admitted, "about what my father did. I know I am here as punishment, but I don't understand why you have been so kind to me. If this is meant to be punishment, why do you not treat me as one?" Kaelan sat across from her, silent for a long moment. Finally he spoke, his voice quieter than she had ever heard it. "Because you are not what I expected, and because of something I have not yet told you." Elira's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" "Wolves like me," he said slowly. "We are bound to one person, a mate. It is not something we choose. It is something we recognize, deep inside, the moment we meet them." He looked directly into her eyes. "The moment I saw you, I knew. You are my mate, Elira." She stared at him, stunned. Her mind raced through everything she had heard about mates in old stories, bonds unbreakable, connections deeper than marriage. But all she could feel in that moment was confusion and anger. "You're saying fate decided this," she said, her voice shaking. "That the same punishment meant to shame my family somehow gave me to you as your mate? How can I trust that this isn't another trick, another cage with a kinder door?" "I understand your anger," Kaelan said carefully. "I did not ask for this timing either. I do not expect you to accept it simply because I have told you. I only wanted you to know the truth, so you understood why I have treated you the way I have." Elira stood and walked to the window, her thoughts spinning. Days passed after that conversation, and though she remained wary, she could not deny the way her heart reacted whenever Kaelan was near. She found herself seeking him out, curious about his past, his kingdom, the loneliness that seemed to follow him despite his power. She learned that Kaelan had lost his brother years ago, killed by nobles who wanted the northern throne for themselves. Kaelan had been blamed unfairly, exiled to these mountains by a court that feared his strength, but refused to admit their own corruption. He had ruled alone since then, trusted by few, betrayed by many. Slowly, Elira's fear turned into understanding. The isolation she saw in him mirrored her own, the quiet loneliness of being blamed for things beyond her control. She began to see, not a monster, but a man who had been wronged, just as she had been. One afternoon, while walking through the castle gardens, Elira found herself smiling for the first time since she had arrived. Kaelan walked beside her, pointing out different plants that grew even in the cold mountain air. "My mother planted these," he said quietly, before she passed. "It's one of the few things left of her." "It's beautiful," Elira said softly. "I'm glad something of hers still grows here." Kaelan looked at her, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The distance between them, built from fear and misunderstanding, had grown smaller with each passing day. But peace rarely lasts long in stories such as this. Word soon reached the castle that a group of nobles, the same ones responsible for framing Kaelan for his brother's death years ago, were traveling to the mountain stronghold. They claimed to be checking on the tribute, ensuring the crown's punishment was being properly carried out. In truth, their goal was far more dangerous. Sarah warned Kaelan the night before their arrival. "They want to provoke you," she said. "If you hurt the girl, or if she runs from you in fear, they will use it as proof that you cannot be trusted with power. They will move against you, take your lands, perhaps even your life." Kaelan's jaw tightened. "And if I do nothing, they will find another way. But do not give them the chance they are hoping for." Elira, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped into the room. "Then let me stand with you," she said firmly. "If they think they can use me against you, let them see that they cannot." Kaelan turned to her, surprised by the certainty in her voice. "This is dangerous, Elira. If they see loyalty between us, they may try to hurt you to weaken me." "I am not afraid," she said, though her heart raced. Not anymore. Not of you, and not of them. The following morning, the nobles arrived with an escort of soldiers, their smiles polite but their eyes calculating. Lord Dane, the leader of the group, stepped forward with exaggerated concern. "We simply wish to confirm the girl is being treated appropriately," he said. "The crown takes its punishments seriously. She is treated with respect," Kaelan said evenly, "as she deserves." Lord Dane's eyes narrowed slightly. Respect? For a criminal's daughter? How curious. He turned to Elira. "Tell us, girl. Has the Wolf King harmed you in any way? Threatened you? Surely a man of his reputation could not resist his nature for long." Elira felt everyone's eyes on her. She knew what they wanted. A single word of fear, one crack in her composure that they could twist into a weapon against Kaelan. She lifted her chin and spoke clearly. "The Wolf King has shown me nothing but fairness since I arrived. If you came expecting to hear otherwise, you have wasted your journey." Lord Dane's expression flickered with irritation, but he quickly masked it. "How touching! Perhaps the disgraced house of Ravine has found comfort in her new master." "That is enough," Kaelan said, his voice carrying an edge of warning. "You came to confirm the tribute is safe. She is safe. Your business here is finished." Sensing his plan slipping away, Lord Dane tried one final tactic. "Perhaps we should take her back with us, to ensure the crown's justice is being carried out properly. A formal inspection, perhaps, away from the king's influence." "No," Elira said before Kaelan could respond. "I will not go with you. My place is here." The certainty in her voice left no room for argument. Lord Dane's schemes, built on the assumption that Elira would be desperate to escape or that Kaelan would react with violence, crumbled in front of the gathered soldiers and servants. Without proof of cruelty or fear, the nobles had nothing to report to the crown that would justify moving against the Wolf King. Furious but defeated, Lord Dane and his group left the castle that same day, their plan exposed and useless. Kaelan watched them go, then turned to Elira, something like awe in his eyes. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "I wanted to," she replied. "I am done being punished for choices I didn't make, and I am done pretending I don't care what happens to you." Kaelan stepped closer, his hand gently reaching for hers. "Elira, I know this began as punishment, but I do not wish for it to end that way. I want to give you a place here, not as a tribute, but as someone I choose, and who chooses me in return." Elira looked up at him, the fear and confusion of her first days in the castle finally settling into something steadier, something real. "I choose you too," she said softly. In the months that followed, news spread across the kingdom that the disgraced daughter of a corrupt lord had become the Wolf King's queen, standing beside him, not out of punishment, but out of genuine loyalty and love. The court that once sought to use her as a pawn watched in quiet defeat as their plans failed, unable to deny the strength of the bond between Kaelan and Elira. What had begun as a sentence meant to shame her family became instead the beginning of a life Elira had never dared to imagine, one built on trust, respect, and a connection deeper than fate itself had promised. The Wolf King, once feared and misunderstood, finally found peace beside the one person who saw him clearly from the very beginning. And Elira, once punished and cast aside, became not a victim of the crown's cruelty, but a queen who had claimed her own place in the world, standing exactly where she was always meant to be.